Hello everyone and welcome back to the New York Napoleons Week 3 Team Builder of the CGT. We are here this week with Joe.
What's up, everybody?
So Joe has no idea what's going on with this team. I mean, he helped me prep with it, but I don't know if he knows the final sets or anything. And he's not allowed to help me during the battle, but he's just chilling in the apartment, so he's going to sit here and hype me up during this battle.
Let's go!
Which, if you have problems with as the commissioner, he's not actually giving me any advice. It's actually probably more distracting than helping, to be honest.
I'm not gonna say anything.
But anyway, this week we are taking on the Calgary Flamethrowers, coached by Galar. And if you have not seen their channel before, go check it out. Links in the description below. As are all the coaches this season, including the ones I don't get to play, which is sad. But here we are. Anyway, this is the first team we're playing that doesn't actually have a full 12-mon roster, because again, in this league, you could choose to take between 10 and 12 mons, depending on how many points you wanted to spend per mon. And this one only has 11, but those 11 are terrifying. So, this team is Rabombi, Latios, Jinx, Rotom Heat, Bisharp, Solrock, Corviknight, Swampert, Vileplume, Kinkeldurr, and Snorlax. And it's really those last few that I'm worried about here. The Latios and Kinkeldurr obviously are the big two, but Snorlax could be a huge pain for my team. Bisharp's an absolute nuisance. And Rotom Heat, I have no answer to. Like, anywhere on my roster. You'd think with something like a Sylveon, you'd have an answer to Rotom Heat, but Sylveon can't do anything to it. It just doesn't touch it. So I really was struggling to find answers to some of these mons. And it took a while, but I think we got there in the end. So the first mon here is actually the first time that Galvantula is going to be showing up this season, and it is going to be rocking out with a magnet set. I almost ran specs on this just because I don't think Swampert comes. And other than that, spamming Thunder and Volt Switch is just like super free, because Bug Buzz is always a like looming threat for things like the Vileplume and the Latios to not really switch into this. Swampert can switch into obviously an electric type move. I have the energy ball for it, so if Swampert exists and I'm worried it's going to come in, Bug Buzz is the safe middle ground play, and since I'm not actually choiced in any way, I can then energy ball and kill it even through a Rindo Berry most likely. Magnet is just, again, it's just, I wanted damage from my electric moves because those are what I'm going to be spamming 90% of the time in this game. And so just getting that extra 20% seemed to be the most helpful thing for this set. I don't have webs though, and I wanted webs, but I ultimately couldn't fit it with all the other moves that I wanted, and I didn't think they were necessary. The only reason that webs would be nice is to match my opponent's webs, but it didn't seem like that was going to be worth it, because Bisharp is obviously something you never want to just hand webs to. Corviknight doesn't care, Latios doesn't care, Rotom Heat doesn't care, and those are like half the things I'm worried about. And Kinkeldurr doesn't really care either, because it's super slow, so like, that's like everything I was worried about. So webs just, I wanted them, but I also didn't feel quite right in this matchup. Next up is the other super spammable mon in this matchup, which is Galarian Zapdos. Just look at my opponent's Thunderous Kick switch-ins. They are Vileplume. I mean, Latios, I guess, but that thing doesn't really switch into Galarian Zapdos happily. It's just banded. We're just going to be kicking Thunderouses thunderously. Can we kick like a Thundurus?
Float like a Thundurus, sting like a Beedrill?
That might be the title.
Oh.
The one thing I did learn this week, and I think is really interesting, and I shout-outs to my front office who's helping me figure out these mechanics, because I actually didn't know them. Thunderous Kick gets a defense drop. Corviknight has an ability called Mirror Armor, and Mirror Armor makes it so that any stat drop that would be applied to Corviknight is instead applied to the other Pokemon. And in this case, that defense drop gets bounced back to me on my Zapdos. But because that defense drop now comes from the ability of the Corviknight, it does actually count as the other Pokemon causing a stat drop, which means it does trigger Defiant. And so if I go for a Thunderous Kick into a max HP, max defense leftovers Corviknight, I do just enough damage that after leftovers, when I get the defense drop into +2 attack, I will guaranteed still kill the Corviknight at +2. So I always kill Corviknight by clicking Thunderous Kick. Even if it switches in from full health and is max physically defensive and has leftovers, I will always kill the Corviknight. Which is just so convenient, you know? And then if you look at the rest of the roster, there's no ghost types. There's no like punishment really. I mean, yeah, Vileplume can come in, and the big punishment here would be like Effect Spore from the Vileplume. Like, that's the one thing that I have to watch out for. But Vileplume coming in on a Galarian Zapdos is basically hoping for one Effect Spore pop just to pray that it happens, because U-Turn and Brave Bird are so good. And so just having this Mon in the back, it outspeeds Non-Scarf Rotom Heat and just kind of is able to pressure that. It just kills everything, including and up to the Corviknight. So I decided to go with the Bandit set this week just because it did so much work. It doesn't really get threatened by Kinkeldr, which is why the Galvantula and the Zapdos are so good this week, is because they don't die to Mach Punch from Kinkeldr, which is otherwise really good against my roster. Again, despite it being resisted, you'd be surprised how much damage it's going to do to my roster. But almost every mon on my roster this week resists it because I just didn't want to deal with it. But there's one that doesn't. So this is the weird Shell Smash with the Rapid Spin set, which is a little bit me conceding that I definitely want a way to remove webs if the situation comes up where I need to for a late game opportunity. However, if webs don't come up early, this thing goes absolutely nuts. It can just win a game, and I didn't, outside of the Bisharp, really need liquidation, and I don't know what Bisharp necessarily does to me to actively threaten me out again, and I can 2-hit KO it with Icicle Spear. So I figured I'm going to go for the Rapid Spin option just so that I have it in case my opponent decides, hey, we're going to just go for rocks, we're going to go for webs, we're going to be annoying. I was like, yeah, just get rid of them. Like, I will have an option to get rid of them in the worst case scenario, because the only mon that Liquidation did more to, or relevantly different amounts of damage to, was the Bisharp. Solrock still dies to an Icicle Spear unless it's like fully physically defensive, so it was really worth not bothering. I guess Snorlax too, if it's like thick fat, could maybe be a pain, but again, this thing isn't really an early game mon, it's really a late game cleaner when those mons are super chipped. So I'm not super worried about them being at full health. If they're at full health and I'm forced into my Cloyster, I'm already in a bad spot, and it's not Cloyster's fault. So that's why I just decided Rapid Spin was going to be better here this matchup. But that said, there is definitely an option, or an argument to be made that Rapid Spin was the suboptimal move, and that's true. I need more removal on this team. That's something I'm working on.
What item are you running on?
White Herb. I ended up staying White Herb. I thought about it, because White Herb popping on the webs isn't great, because then I still keep my defense drops, but it didn't seem worth going boots, because I still have the defense drops, right? So I figured there's an upside where I don't have the defense drops with White Herb, and the other way there's no upside, you know, like it just ends up in the same place. So next up is my Slowbro, which is another mon that's going to resist Mach Punch from Kinkeldr, but doesn't outspeed it, and is just going to get killed by a knockoff. Just kidding, it's Culberberry. So we are rocking out with dual stabs. I did go with Surf over Scald, just to get a little bit of extra damage, because again, things like the Rotom Heat coming in and being able to take a Scald maybe can't quite take a Surf. But this thing mostly spams Teleport, switches in, is annoying. Maybe click Psychic against something like the Kinkeldr, just to try to catch that thing staying in and being annoying. But more often than not, this forces a lot of switches more than it actually does the damage itself. And Teleport will just keep it healthy, keep it around in the back. And I am rocking that Culberberry to make sure that it can switch in on that Kinkeldr one time, although Facade is still doing a boatload of damage. And so this thing is just a little bit, I don't know, it's like, it's good, and it forces switches, but Kinkeldr's still super scary, and Facade's just a huge pain. So, but having the Psychic and just having that option for Kinkeldr in the back, to be able to take a knockoff or a Facade in a pinch, just felt like it was necessary, and Slowbro kind of felt almost mandatory in this matchup. But Regenerator's really good, and I liked the set that I was running anyway. Next up is Assault Vest Magmortar, which I'm bringing Mach Punch this week. So if you watched last week's battle, you'll know that if I had Mach Punch, I 100% win that game. Didn't bring it. That's life. So we're bringing it. It's not at all why I'm bringing Mach Punch. There's a Bisharp. Like, let's be honest. But anyway, and also like something like Rabombi, which is sashed. Mach Punch is super nice. Now, the big thing about this Magmortar, the big tech on this Magmortar, is that last move in Rock Tomb. It is super spammable because Bisharp does not come in. And if it does come in and gets the Defiant boost, I have Mach Punch, so I can make sure I kill it. Rock Tomb is so spammable against my opponent's roster because the things that would switch into this, things like usually the Rotom Heat would be a pretty good check to the Magmortar. The Latios would generally be a pretty good check to the Magmortar. Don't want their speed reduced, and Rotom's actually weak to it, which is actually kind of convenient. Corviknight, obviously with Mirror Armor, that's a pain, whatever. But it's still neutral. I still can Flare Blitz the next turn. Corviknight doesn't immediately threaten me, and just being able to speed control in that way and get damage off that is relevant damage into something like a Flare Blitz or a Dual Chop into the Latios, which, again, I don't think my opponent will necessarily expect me to go Dual Chop. I am Assault Vest again, so I can take a hit from a non-Specs Latios. So this thing mostly does like a couple jobs that are very, very convenient. One, it's immune to sleep powder from the Vileplume, which is nice. It's like not actually irrelevant this match. And a lovely kiss from Jinx. Again, not irrelevant in this matchup. Or sleep powder from Rabombi. Get sleep powder, right? Yeah, I guess it's used stun spore most of the time, but okay. Well, either way, I'm immune to sleep. And then just being able to take that one hit and dish out a big return hit, having the priority just in case that Bisharp does try to get out of hand, or just the Kinkelder that's at super low health after, you know, Guts of taking it down and whatever. Mach Punch is there for that option to just give me that little bit of extra damage, and maybe break through a couple of mons that otherwise would be problems. This thing probably doesn't sweep, but I think it'll get a lot of damage off, be good team support, because if at worst it exits the battlefield with the opponent at -1 speed, I'm in a better position because I can play around that a lot easier. Again, things like Latios outspeed my Galvantula. If I can get that to -1, it does not outspeed my Galvantula, which makes my attacks much freer. So that's why this thing is the way that it is. I really wanted to be special this week because Kinkelder has better physical defense, and I have a worse physical attack. Corviknight's the same way. But I just couldn't quite justify it because the move set that it gets from special side wasn't quite there, and it gets literally nothing for Rotom Heat on the special side, which is super frustrating. Like all the moves you'd run normally, like Psychic is the only one that's even neutral. Next up is my Sylveon this week. We are going to be rocking out with the Sunny Day Weather Ball Sylveon because my front office said Sylveon gets no way to hit Corviknight except for Mystical Fire, which lowers your own special attack. And I said, yes, it does. So Sunny Day into Weather Ball as a Corviknight switches in with a little bit of special attack investment, as you guys can see. Okay, maybe a lot of special attack investment, as you guys can see. Does actually just kill the Corviknight. If it's max specially defensive, it doesn't, but then it's not max physically defensive, and then it'll die to Zapdos. Additionally, I don't necessarily want to reveal that on turn 1, because, again, I don't necessarily kill the Corviknight if it's max specially defensive. So, Hyper Voice. Into the Corviknight switch in, gives me information about whether it's leftovers, whether it might be a berry, maybe it'll kill Roost or U-turn, so I'll get some information about its set. I have Baton Pass. Again, 4 things switching into this that I'm not sure what's going to switch in, or maybe the Rotom Heat if I know that's going to switch in. Baton Pass out, get that momentum, keep myself in the driver's seat in this match, because that's going to be the name of the game here. That is how I win this fight, is if I can maintain that momentum and maintain that offensive pressure. But the one big switch into this is the Corviknight. Now, you might be saying, Sunny Day, you know Rotom Heat's a potential switch into this. That thing gets absolutely nuclear in Sunny Day. And you'd be right. But also I have an Assault Vest Magmortar that doesn't care about Overheat at all. And so the Rotom's still going to be spamming Electric-type attacks either way, so it doesn't really matter that it's been put into Sun. And Sylveon can take a Sun-boosted Overheat as well, if it really needs to. Weather Ball's not doing anything, Hyper Voice isn't doing anything, so like, in the worst case, I just click Baton Pass, eat a Sun-boosted Overheat from the Rotom Heat, Baton Pass out, and then get into whatever safely. So the Rotom Heat, yes, it gets powered up, but it doesn't really matter that much. If my opponent brings Vileplume with Chlorophyll for a manual Sun Sylveon, then I have been outplayed, and that is the life that I'm going to live. And that's it. I totally lost track of where we were in that team, so that's it for this. Joe will be here, as I said, for the match itself as well. He will be a little bit more talkative, perhaps, but again, not giving me any advice or anything. Just hype man in the back, having a good time. So, thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you guys all back here tomorrow with that battle. Once again, it's against Galadite, I think 74. I don't have his name written down, but I think it's 74. And I will see you guys all back here tomorrow. Take care, everybody. You could have said something.